All right, welcome to this week's episode. It's a big episode. It's number 52 for us. That's a full year's worth of episodes. That's a lot.
Crazy.
It's kind of a lot.
It is a lot.
And we haven't missed. So we're here with Jeanette and Matt Bennett of all sorts of different titles and magazines and all sorts of stuff. But what is the official name? Do you have like the Bennett Communications? Is that the name of the company?
So that's our legal name, Bennett Communications. But
Okay.
most people haven't heard of that.
Yeah.
And so Utah Valley Magazine is our most known brand.
Okay.
And Utah Valley Bride and Business Q and a number of magazines under that. But yeah, when people say, "Oh, we're going to make your lanyard for this event," what do you want us to put? I always have to pause and be like, "Okay, who am I? Am I Bennett Communications? Am I a bride editor? What am I?" A lot of glossy pages.
Yeah, no kidding. And have you guys, from the beginning, you guys started this together, right?
We did, yeah. And so we grew up in Idaho Falls.
Okay.
We met in, I was 8th grade, he was 9th grade.
Idaho Falls proper.
Suburb, Ammon, Idaho.
We learned all about the Idaho Falls before.
Thanks to Brent. Yep.
And the gangs.
There's different sides of Idaho Falls, we found out.
I am passionate about Idaho. I never want to live there again. So sorry to the state. But I only buy Idaho potatoes. Like, I will leave a store without potatoes if they're trying to sell me Washington or Colorado or something. It has to be Idaho. And if I see an Idaho license plate, like, my heart skips a beat. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm totally going to know this person. I never do. We haven't lived there. Well, we left after we graduated high school. We went back for a short 2-year thing, which is actually when we started Utah Valley Magazine, or at least the ideas for it. But so we met in junior high, but didn't. It's not like a meeting we remember, it wasn't like a day we met. And then in high school, we were on the high school newspaper staff together and went on several double dates, not with each other, but with, we were both dating kids from the other high school. So occasionally we would drive together to go see these people. And Matt had a sweet truck that had holes in the floor and, it's pretty awesome. And then... so he went on a mission. After his mission was when we started dating.
Okay.
So he went on a mission to upstate New York. I was in the Hill Cumorah pageant and saw him there when he was on his mission.
Really?
Yeah.
What were you doing in the Hill Cumorah pageant?
I was a harvest dancer, exactly. Trying to find my husband. Yeah, I'm not really a dancer, but it's not like it's really big dancing there, So I went back kind of for an adventure. I was... college student looking for fun. A friend and I applied and I got in and she didn't, but I went anyway by myself and made some friends and saw Matt on his mission. And we actually just took our kids back there, for the first time last summer. We wanted them to see where he'd lived and see the pageant and all that. So it was cool.
Are they still doing the pageant?
So this year was supposed to be their last year.
Okay.
So last year was the second to last. We decided to go then. And this year they're not doing it. So I guess I'm not sure if they're going to do their last year next year or if last year was their last year.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that's shaking out.
It's a cool. So after I graduated, we did like this kind of church history tour and we ended up at the Hill Cumorah pageant. So it was pretty fun to watch.
Awesome. It is pretty incredible. I have some really specific memories of just feelings that I had being in it.
Yeah.
So it was cool to see it again as an audience member last year.
So you guys from the get have been in publishing and newspaper and I don't even know, what do you call that?
Yeah, publishing,
Just publishing?
Communications. Yeah. So Matt's dad was our newspaper advisor in high school.
Okay.
And his dad is like the Mr. Holland's opus. He is that guy for journalism and communications. His students just adore him. And I was one of those students, In fact, when Matt first got home from his mission, we started dating. I'm like, okay, am I just doing this so that...
To get to your dad?
So I can get this guy as my father-in-law? Because he's such a great mentor and just, Mr. Holland is the best way to describe him.
Poor man.
Obviously, married him for him. So it's always been kind of our thing. And then we both went to BYU and graduated in journalism. And I also had a business minor. He did English and I finished my master's there. But both of us in communications and journalism.
Okay.
So it's our thing.
So Matt, it sounds like that was kind of a family thing. Were you all your siblings into journalism and publishing?
No, actually, we, my older brothers, they went into biology and teaching, and one of them was the baseball coach at Timpview over here for a little while, and the biology teacher. And then my other oldest brother, he's actually the principal at Madison High School in Rexburg now. And so I was the first one that kind of went back to journalism. But I remember even from first grade, we had this little, what do they call those? They didn't have photocopiers back then.
Like the mimeograph?
Mimeograph, where
kind of purple?
Yeah.
Carbon copy kind of thing?
Yeah, carbon copies. We had those when I was in first grade, and they used to come out with a little newsletter. And I remember just thinking, this is the coolest thing ever. We're telling our stories. And they even tried to run little pictures in there that were you could hardly tell who was who. But I had an interest in this since first grade, publishing and communicating thoughts and ideas.
Wow.
That's so crazy.
And kind of the same for me. I had a similar newsletter like that in third grade, I remember, and I interviewed the lunch lady. And I hand wrote.
In third grade?
Yeah, it was in my handwriting in the school newsletter. Asking her the favorite things that she fixes.
And when did the Jeanette Gazette come along?
Oh, and then I had my older sister played
What a
school.
great name, the Jeanette Gazette. That's awesome.
I like rhymes. My older sister played school, and she would make me sit there and be her student. She's a teacher now. She's an awesome teacher. And I started playing journalist, and I would predict the weather on a thing that I drew on the wall, and
Just like weathermen now.
totally just
Right.
I'd say
guessing.
I'd say things like there's an upper level low. I didn't even know what I was saying. And then I started a newsletter for my sister's fake school, but it was called the Jeanette Gazette.
No way.
And then when I was blogging for a few years ago, I named my blog Jeanette Gazette. But that gathered cobwebs after a few years. But I had a good few years on that. Yeah.
So what about journaling or publishing? What was it that attracted you to that so early? I mean, I don't know, because it's so not my thing.
No, I can't even write in a journal.
No, to write even a caption can take me hours,
Right.
and I'll just stop.
Well, a podcast is modern day journalism. What you guys are doing is journalism. It's digital journalism. You're smart because you don't have to edit this, right? You don't have to go back and refine it.
Sometimes I say bad things. Brent
Leave
does
that in
for
here.
me.
It's the charm, right? Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. But I think I just loved. I see stories in everything, and so I like being able to highlight people. I like the good news. I did work at the Desert News for a time, but I didn't want to be the person talking to people who don't want to talk to you, people whose house just burned down, criminals. That kind of stuff is not my thing. But talking to people who really are honored and that are excited that someone cares about their story, that is just pure joy for me. To learn someone's story and then present it in a way that's meaningful to them is just huge. It's a huge rush for me. So I was lucky. I think we're both lucky that we knew what we wanted to do when we went to college. And it's evolved a bit. I didn't see the entrepreneur thing coming at first. I thought I'd write for Inc. magazine, Forbes. I thought I'd write about business, which is why I did the business minor and went to the Merit School classes for that. And then when we decided to start a business, all of a sudden I was like, oh, wait. I need to. I wish I would have paid more attention because all those things mattered all of a sudden.
Right.
Yeah, but it's been fun, and we're not sick of it. I mean, it's evolved and pivoted, and some things are a pain, but the storytelling's not.
Storytelling's just awesome. Getting to know. I feel like a lot of famous people, Steve Young or Larry King or Donny Osmond, they have this public persona, but it's just so fun to have them talk about how they get recognized in Walmart down here in Provo or something like that. And a lot of times we have a section called Angels Among Us, and they're these people who just want anything but publicity for what they're doing. And it changes us as journalists to go in and hear them talk about their gratitude for all the things that they have in life. And you're looking around at their 12 foster kids that they've brought in and how there's a 1-inch gap of weather strip under their front door. And you just think, oh man, you're amazing. I'm so glad we have a chance to shine a spotlight on what you're doing.
Right.
That's awesome. I mean, obviously the stories, that's what made us start the podcast.
It's true. We just don't write very well.
No,
right?
That's why we talk.
Right. I don't even know that we do that very well, but it's accepted in podcasts. Right?
You have a really good radio voice.
Wow. I keep hearing that. And I hate my voice.
No,
I hear it
good.
and I'm just like, what the crap?
It's an
Sound like a
instrument you've
big
got to
lerp. But thank you. No, it's pretty cool. Well, and I think writing is such an art. I mean, you read, it's funny if you just try to journal, right? It's amazing how hard just that is. But to somebody that's a good writer.
I remember I had a professor at Rick's College, which is where I started, Lee Warnick. And we were talking about writing and classes and things. And he said, what you do actually doesn't come naturally to many people. And that's when I first thought about it. And I thought, oh, okay, maybe there is some level of talent or some sort of predisposition that you would have for this type of thing.
100%. It's like a good singer, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can take voice lessons, but if you're tone deaf and you can't sing, no amount of teaching is going to change that. It can make a good singer better.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think there's just something in the brain that I say it with barbecue, right? I mean, to me, barbecue is such a simple thing. When people can't grasp it, I'm like, what? It's easy. What? You're overthinking it.
So many things are a form of expression, and your food is an example of that. You're expressing your creativity through food. And I think the way people dress is a form of expression, hair, all of that. We all really want to express our feelings. We just do it in really different ways. But writing actually is still hard work.
For sure.
I wouldn't say, it's easy to write. Even 20 years later, in fact, in some ways it's gotten harder because there's so many other things encroaching on, like you were talking about your job titles a second ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, writer's only one of my job titles.
Right.
And a lot of times that ends up being, the other ones are screaming at me more. And so the writing is sometimes, my writing is always the last thing that goes into the magazine. The magazine's usually done and we're waiting on Jeanette's stuff. And I have to go find a place. I've written a lot in cars and up the canyon because life is just really distracting. And writing isn't something you can do in 15, 20-second increments. I've got to really be in tune with the words, But words are delicious to me. Like we've seen Hamilton a few times, and the first time we saw it, we're sitting there in New York, and I had a pen, and in the playbill, in the dark, I was just writing down the words or phrases that I was like, oh, wow. I was just scribbling those words down. And at the end of the night, I couldn't even read what I had written, but it was just like I couldn't believe the word plays that he would use. And that's kind of how I like to write too. I like to twist little cliches or turn things upside down for a headline. That's gotten me in trouble a few times, but I like to play with words. It's like my sandbox.
It's fun. Just hearing you guys talk about it. That's one thing that's been cool about the podcast is you get to hear about people's passions. And so
when you can see it, like as they talk about it.
And that's exactly the difference.
You can watch how excited you are to talk about words.
It's like watching a little kid talk about like a new toy. There's just, and when you talk like that after doing it for so long, there's so many people that don't get to feel that in their life. And it's such a cool blessing that, cause it is a lot of work. I mean, it's just like what I do here. I mean, it's holy crap. It is so much work and it took a ton of work to get here, but I love it. I wouldn't want to do anything else.
I remember interviewing a guy who's started several restaurants around, and I asked this sort of a basic question, but I said, what made you want to start a restaurant? And he looked at me like that was a really stupid question. And he's like, I think like everybody dreams of starting a restaurant.
Right.
And I was like, everyone dreams of starting a magazine. Hello. And we were both so passionate about what we were doing that we were pretty sure everyone wished they could be us, Right. And I agree with you that it's exciting to interview people like you do and like we do that are just in love with what they're doing.
Right.
And they like reading about it even when they don't have to, and they like studying it, and they might bore others at times with the details of that particular industry or trend or something, but that's what it takes to
succeed. That's why I can't talk to anybody about what I do. Everyone just goes,
but it's totally true. And what you said, when you have that level of, the word passion's probably overused, but you will outwork anybody else at it because it's not a job, right? And it does take a ton of hard work to turn something you love into a living is hard work.
Yeah, because you are defying the odds.
Right.
So you're going to have boundary. What word am I looking for? Barrier. There you go.
Right.
A barrier, one after another. And so if you love it, you'll figure out a way around it.
Right.
If you don't love it, you'll be like, well, there's a barrier.
Totally.
But it's fun to do something where you're not watching the clock. I had a clock watching job one summer. I worked for the government right outside Idaho Falls. The locals call it the site. But this little government job that they didn't really need me. They didn't really need anybody out there. People were just watching the clock tick. And I had the most boring summer. I honestly just really hated
pretty
it.
Much.
Yeah.
They just do everything way slower. It's like whenever I watch a UDOT crew, Oh man, drives me insane.
Yeah.
But I mean, if
Yeah.
I was doing that job, I'd do the same thing.
Well, I don't know. They block off a road and then don't work on it. you know.
Exactly.
Okay, can
Oh
we
my
not?
Gosh, drives me crazy.
Yeah, if this is a 12-hour job, only block the road for 12 hours and
Right.
do the job.
Right.
Yeah. But that government summer was a turning point for me too, because I'd made more money per hour than I ever had,
Right.
but I hated it. Like they gave me a project for the summer. I was done in like 10 days because I was excited about it at first. And then when I was done, they're like, well, I mean, we would draw up soccer plays for hours and stuff. And I would walk to the far end of the building to look at a bulletin board that sometimes had new flyers on it. I mean, I was inventing ways. I would drink a lot of water, so I had to use the bathroom, and I'd use the furthest bathroom. These were the things because I wasn't passionate,
Right.
about it. So it's fun to love what you do. And we've written about a lot of people who are a lot more successful than we are, have scalable businesses. Ours isn't like perfectly scalable, but I still wouldn't trade it, know, because it's we grew up in Idaho, of course, around farms. His family actually had a dairy farm for a while. My parents weren't farmers ever, but I feel like we have a farm of words. Like we grow words, we grow pages. We have 5 kids. They've had different roles at times, and this is our farm, our family farm.
It's a cool, interesting way to look at it. I've never thought of that.
And I mean, you said like, yeah, it might not be as big as others, but like everyone has their version of what makes them happy. And as long as you get to that and you can appreciate it, then who cares about what else is going on?
Yeah, for sure. And I think we crave progress and we like challenges just as humans. It's fun that's why, you show up to if a race has a half marathon and a 5K, there's always way more people in the half marathon than the 5K, which is surprising.
There's no such thing as half marathons, just so you know.
So why is there
You
a
have
half
your
pound of
blinders.
ribs?
Listen, you can't run a half marathon. A marathon is a marathon. You just ran a 13-mile race.
So I'm going to buy 0.5
Wow.
This
pounds.
has been like, we talk about this all the time. I'm like, I'm so sick of seeing 13.5 or whatever it is. Or like I ran a
0.1.
half marathon. I'm like, I went halfway to church. Did I go to church?
Okay, well, how far have you run?
Not even 10 feet for like 30 years.
Okay, here's
It's
the
just the
thing.
principle.
13 miles, super hard. Look,
Well, I agree. It just needs its own name.
it does.
Right?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Okay.
That's all I'm saying. Like,
I'm
I
catching
think
the
it's
vision.
insulting to the marathon, right? You can't run a half of a marathon. Anyways,
Okay,
sorry.
I
Rant-
could get on board with you for
Right.
that.
Just-
Okay.
It deserves a cool name. It's super hard. But,
Okay, I'm going to
marathon.
brainstorm.
yes.
She's going to come up with a new word.
She's farming.
We're gonna
She's farming
change the
right
world.
now.
You planted a seed. I'm going to harvest it.
So when did the idea first come of starting a magazine? And was that the first idea you guys had, like, as a business?
Yeah, so we we graduated in journalism, and then we both had our first jobs. I was at the Deseret News, and then we moved to Idaho Falls for a couple years. Matt was working for a publisher there. He was actually, this is going to blow your mind. Everybody sit down to hear this. But he was the editor-in-chief of the Potato Grower magazine.
Wow.
And there's more, editor-in-chief of Sugar Producer magazine.
Yeah, anything you want to know about sweeteners, corn sweeteners, sugar beets, sugar cane, I'm your man.
You got it.
Yeah.
And so when we were in Idaho Falls, that's what he was doing. I taught at Rick's for a couple years as it was transitioning to BYU Idaho. And honestly, and I think we tell the origin story slightly differently because there
On the
was,
way over here, she said, "Hey, they may ask us about how we started our company," and she said, "I think you've made some stuff up over the years." and I said, "Okay, if they ask that question, I'm just gonna listen because I totally agree. I do that all the time. I just want to hear the
he's
truth."
a storyteller.
So I want
right?
to hear him tell it first. then.
It would be a much better story if I told it, but hers will be true. So
Well, here, I think both versions are somewhat true. No, but here's the true version. So we both graduated in journalism. We're living in Idaho Falls. He's working for those agricultural magazines. He was traveling a lot and bringing magazines home from Fargo, Moses Lake, the exciting destinations.
San Antonio.
Oh, yeah.
The big city.
And these different cities had magazines that were small, fairly small. St. George had a magazine. Salt Lake had a magazine. And so that was germinating. At the same time, when I became a mom, our oldest is 22 and a half. He had his half birthday the other day, and he's like, why did we not celebrate my half birthday? Anyway, when I became a mom, my mind switched. I was working at the Deseret News until about 12 hours before he was born. And I intended to go back. I really did love my job there. But as soon as he was born, the entrepreneur in me started just brainstorming. How could I, because I love this baby so much, and I love being a mom even more than I'd anticipated. I'd always planned to be a mom, but I'd always planned on a career. And no one had ever really talked to me about when those worlds collided, what that was going to feel like. I feel like women have more role models now. And that's one of the things that I do enjoy doing, is working through that transition with a lot of our female employees. And it's not a one size fits all in any way, but that clash is something that you can't totally anticipate or prepare for until you're there and kind of can sort through your emotions. So I decided I didn't want to go back to the Deseret News, but I had just finished a master's. I loved the industry, had a skill set. And so that's when my entrepreneur mind was like, okay, I would love to keep in this industry, but how could I be in control of my schedule and where I work? And
did you know you had an entrepreneur mind?
No, because
did it surprise you as you started kind of coming with those thoughts?
It did actually surprise me. Those business classes that I took because I wanted to learn about business so I could write about business. I didn't take them, it didn't even cross my mind that I would start a business. I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. I come from a lot of teachers. Matt has a few on his side, and I have a lot on my side. And so it was just a different mindset. But I am a solution-oriented person and a pretty ambitious person, I would say. In first grade, I won the reading contest because they said whoever wins the reading contest, whoever gets first place gets like these cool prizes. Well, I didn't know what everybody else was going to do. So I'm like, well, I've got to win. So I read 244 books. And the next person read like 34 or something. Like, I blew everybody out of the water. And because I was just
she won by more than 200 books,
and because I just read multiple books a day, and I was a good reader because my sister made me learn how to read early on. Anyway, that's the only point of that, is just like I'm a pretty driven person. And so when I had our son, I was like, I bet I can solve this problem. I bet I can solve the problem of doing what I love and earning some income, but also using the skill set. So it was a complete switch in my head. But once I was on board with that, and we'd been doing some research and stuff, we were just like really on fire and excited. And the first thing that we tried, so there were 3 things before Utah Valley Magazine, and we don't need to spend a ton of time on them, but I sent out a newsletter. The name Bennett Communications came to be just like out of my head, out of both of our heads really, but we created this newsletter, Bennett Communications, and I sent it out to all the people in Idaho Falls, that's where we were at the time, who we knew, so that owned businesses pretty much.
Which I think was 20.
Yeah, I think we sent out about 20 newsletters saying, Bennett Communications can produce newsletters for you. We can write copy. We can do anything. And I have a team of professionals, which was a lie. I had myself and Matt after hours.
We are a team.
Yeah,
I was going to say, that's a team.
Yeah.
And we got 3 calls. I did a couple small jobs off that, little projects. And then from there, we started this national newsletter that was subscription based. And
Was that a thing back then? I mean, because people hear it now, like, oh yeah, how many newsletters do you have in your inbox, right? But back then, I feel like that wasn't as big of a
No, and this
thing as it is now.
Yeah, these were paper newsletters.
Yeah.
And so we bought a list of all the high schools in the country and that had 500 students or more, which was 10,000 plus. And we hand stuffed. There are machines that do the work that we thought we had to do. So we hand stuffed 10,000 envelopes with sales letters and sample newsletters and organized them by zip code so we could get a discount at the bulk mail. We learned a ton on this project. We learned about sales tax. We got our business license and all that. And then we put $5,000 on a credit card to send those out. And 7 days later, we got the first call, and it was from Patty Kennedy in Seattle, Washington. Never met her, but like that moment when she called to order her newsletter for $59 was like so exciting. Like I'm getting
cool you
excited
remember
talking
the
about
name.
it. Yeah. And that
She
got us
remembers
excited.
what she wore.
But I can't remember if I took my vitamin, you know what I mean? So it's like I'm selectively good at memory, but that became exciting because every day we'd get orders in the mail or phone calls, and it was just exciting. Well, if we get this % return, we could be this, we do that. Just the math of it. I'm kind of a math head. I'm a numbers person, and so I was always doing the math of what if we get this type of result, or what if we, get them to sign up for 2 years? What if that would be, exciting? And so we did that for 2 years before we were like, let's do the next thing, which is Utah Valley Magazine. So that first project, even though we don't do it anymore, we did it for about 9 years, and then it had.
The newsletter you did for 9 years?
Yeah.
And what was it about?
So it was called Scholastic News Service, and it was for high school journalism advisors. Tiny niche. So a lot of times in high schools, they'll tell the PE coach or somebody, hey, you're in charge of the school newspaper. They don't know anything. And then, so our newsletter gave them ideas, and we have a crossword in there. This was when the internet it existed, but it wasn't in every classroom, no smartphones. And so we provided a service for them. We had a cartoon that was high school related that they could then take and use in their paper. The crossword was that way. We would give them story ideas. Here's an idea here's the recent statistics on teen drivers. Here's the statistics. Now go interview the following 3 people in your school, like the traffic officer and whatever, and ask them these 3 questions. And the advisors really liked it.
I was going to say that's brilliant if you think about it. I mean, just having the idea that was a need.
Yeah. So it was a small little need. And
were you patterning that off of something you had seen, or did you come up with the idea like to create this kind of content, to add a cartoon and a crossword and to give them interview questions? I mean, was that all kind of your guys' brainchild?
Would say so. And Matt's dad gave us input too, because he'd been a journalism advisor.
I was going to say,
and he was a good one,
too.
but he had gotten a lot of calls through the years from advisors being like, I don't know what I'm doing, And so he was really a good advisor on that. And there was a newsletter around town called Tidbits. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
The design of it we thought was cool. And so we borrowed some design ideas from that. So yeah, it just kind of evolved. But like the excitement of the orders coming in was
I'm sure.
pretty thrilling.
Well, and I think that's a good deal. If I'm a PE coach and I need to help with the newspaper, I mean, because a lot of teachers have to do that stuff, right? I mean, they kind of have to.
Yeah, and at the time they didn't have the internet. They didn't have an easy way. Well, they didn't have an easy way
Right.
of getting on the internet to find the statistics. So that was a fun project. I remember doing the math, like if 100% of people subscribe, we went on the
We are going to retire.
Well, I remember it was going to be like $400,000 or something,
Right.
which we went on a Parade of Homes thing, and there was a home that was $400,000. So like in my mind, of course, you're never going to get 100%. We had usually 6 to 8% of the schools subscribe, which was great and a success, but it wasn't enough to live on, but it was a great first start of learning so much and learning how business worked and going through some of the hurdles that I thought were going to be hard, like figuring out a business license and sales tax and bulk mail. And then that became second nature.
Sorry, what surprised you the most during that time, like of starting that? Like what part of the business were you like, I really wasn't expecting this? Either it was hard or it was more fun than you thought.
So that part, and also when we started the magazine, was collections was not fun, nor is it, a guarantee.
Right.
At the restaurant, see, it's smart because you have people pay before you hand them the food.
Yeah, you have to learn that
that's
the hard way
a brilliant
sometimes.
model.
Right? It's like, hey, we got to charge at least half.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and so with the newsletters, there was just a collection process, and you have to go through school POs. And like, we had to start sending them the product oftentimes before their school would process the PO, and so that delay was a bit of a sad surprise. And also when we started the magazine, the same thing kind of happened. I knew the math when we did the first issue, and Matt's brother and that brother's wife sold ads. So at the time, it was kind of the 4 of us doing some math, and it was like, well, if we sell enough ads to pay to print the first issue, we'll do it. And if not, we won't. Well, we sold enough to pay to print the first issue plus 2,000. And like, cool, we might have made $1 an hour or something because it took 6 months to get the first one out. But the thing is, people don't pay right we didn't invoice till the magazine came out.
Gotcha.
And then some people never paid. Some people come back with, hey, can we pay you with trade? And, so there was a lot to learn on that collections front with both.
Back then it was putting a check into an envelope, right?
Yeah.
Sending it to you, which
Exactly.
makes it even harder.
So then when you call them, they're like, oh, I'll mail you a check today.
Yeah, it's in the mail.
Perfect. We'll stand by the mailbox tomorrow. So that was interesting, and it's still a challenge, with this little I hope it's a little economic bubble we're going through. Collections is again a worry for me because we just put out a bride magazine and St. George Parade of Homes magazine. Anyway, where people still owe us quite a bit of money on that. And we're not the first people paid. I remember the first business that went bankrupt on us that hadn't paid for their ad. And like, I was so sure that I could get the money. So I started going to the bankruptcy hearings. I would get all the notices. I'm like, I'm going to go there. I'm going to come back with our money. You get there and you realize, oh, there's a bank in front of me. There's the government in front of me.
Right.
I ran an ad that's already run. I have nothing to hold over their heads. And so now I just, get frustrated if I see a bankruptcy notice, but I don't waste any time fighting it.
Right.
But anyway, that doesn't happen a lot. But yeah, we had to learn a lot. We didn't know how much we had to learn, actually.
If you knew it, do you think you would have done it?
That's a really good question. It's kind of like building a home.
Yeah.
Had we known all the work and everything, yeah, I think that goes for anything in life. I think that goes for getting married, for having kids. If you knew how much work your kids were going to be, would you have so easily started down that
just
path?
kidding.
How much they're gonna cost?
I was going to say that married one it's like, I wonder how many people would answer no to that one. That's a big question because it's true. I mean, starting a business is the same thing. You're right. They all relate. I mean, you learn as you go. I don't care how much knowledge you have when you open a business or when you get married. I mean,
ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
At the beginning.
Totally.
You have to
Ignorance is
jump in.
bliss.
Yeah.
So, like the first issue of Utah Valley Magazine, when it came out, I was 25 and he was 27. September 2000. So this is our 20th year. We'll hit our 20th birthday. Wow. September. We're planning a big party that we hope we
Via
can have.
No, don't do it. I'll come. I'll bring people. Come on. We got to start getting together again. This is ridiculous.
I agree. It's hard mentally to go through what we've been going through. It's really been a switch.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we need a Bennett Communications party.
We need a big party.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I want to invite all the people who've been on the cover the past 20 years, which is a really impressive list. So we've been, sending them, gathering their updated emails and things. We've had 7 or 8 who've passed away, actually.
No way.
People like Lavelle Edwards, Ruth Hale, that started Hale Center Theater, Becky Lockhart, first woman speaker of the House. There's a list like that. But anyway, we hope to have the party, invite the cover stories, invite our key advertisers, some community members, and have some of the people that have been on our cover perform. And so in my mind, it's going to be awesome. Yeah. So Bam Bam's
awesome.
catering.
I was in that 40 under 40.
Yeah, you were.
No big deal.
Why didn't we lead with that?
Yeah, I don't know. We should have.
Now.
Or no, was it 40 under 40? Wait. Yeah.
Or were you? We did 1 year of 30
color.
in their 30s. Oh, it was the color.
30 in their 30s. That's what
Okay.
it was. And then it was personality. I was, yellow. I'm
You're yellow.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a fun one
It
because
was.
the entrepreneur, we had everyone do the color code thing. Red was number 1. Yellow was number 2.
Right.
We hardly
Of
had,
course, red was number 1.
because we take
Leaders.
charge.
What
We
can you
boss
say?
people around.
Bossy leaders.
Are you a red? Yeah, I'm a red. Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed that with either of you two.
But we wanted one of each color on the cover, and with whites at first, the first 35 we did, nobody was a white.
That'd probably be hard to find.
We
a
did
white,
end
huh?
up with a couple whites, so one of them made it on the cover, so we could have all 4 colors represented.
Right.
But whites don't often they don't start their own business.
Right.
Anyway. we won't go
Quarantine
into
is
that,
really
but
easy for the whites.
They're loving it.
They're loving it. I'll lock myself in the basement, baby.
Uh-huh.
So the idea of the magazine, is it what it is today? What you envisioned when you started it?
So when we started, Utah Valley Magazine is a lot like what we envisioned. And some of the stories we've been doing for 20 years. The high school students will change the world. We've done that every May. This is our 20th version of that. We're doing the cover shoot next week. We've delayed it a month just because we have advertisers who aren't ready to, like Thanksgiving Point.
Right.
They didn't want to run an ad that says, "Don't come yet." So we had to wait a minute. But anyway, that's been a really fun article and highlighted one student from every high school every year who's going to change the world. And now we've done it so long, we do a Where Are They Now? We catch up with
That's very
with
cool.
a batch of kids every year too. We've done our celebrity lookalikes for 20 straight years. That's probably the one the community gets behind the most. And every year I think we've probably found every lookalike in town. But every year like a dozen people think they're Taylor Swift. So it's all good. And we have Brad Pitt's, So anyway, it's always fun when we get those.
We always get a few Captain Jack Sparrows.
Yeah, we do.
Really?
Yeah.
And we try to look at it, whether it comes email or...
It might just be men wanting to wear, eyeliner. I don't know.
And 7 bracelets.
Yeah. We try and look at the picture before we read who they think they look like. And if we can tell, then that's going to go in the batch of consideration. If we can't tell.
And sometimes people will tell us, they'll say, I look like so-and-so.
Yeah, but we try not to look at that before we see their picture.
Yeah, but when we finally do read who they say they think they look like, it's some show on the WB something.
Well, and that's actually one interesting thing. Like, the world has changed in 20 years. So back when we started the first few years, celebrities were more common. We all knew the same people. Right. And now with the different channels like that and YouTube celebrities, Instagram celebrities.
It's impossible to know all of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, even that our kids will bring up, that's famous on TikTok or something like that. That name means nothing to me, So that's been kind of interesting. And a commentary on our society, just that we have less shared communication.
That's interesting. So
channels.
It's probably harder for you guys. Is it harder to be creative and kind of break a story or find somebody than it used to be, right? Because everybody has a platform now.
I know. It is interesting, especially when I'm picking a cover. I'd like the people on the cover, and for the most part, this is true, to be someone that's a household name.
Right.
But some people are a total household name, like Rachel Parcell. Do you guys know? You know who she is? Do you know who she is?
We've talked about her a couple times.
I was going to say, is this
she's like one of the OG Instagram influencers.
So for her demographic,
she's Kim Kardashian of Utah.
Yes.
People often say that about their family.
That's what Modern Dad called her.
Right. I thought that was like what's their last name?
No, it's the Parcells.
It's Parcells?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 4 sisters. Anyway, so in her world, she's the most famous person that they can think of.
Right.
And then if you don't know her, which I'm not surprised you haven't heard it because you're not her demographic,
Oh, listen, I love a little Kardashian. No, I'm just
there's a
kidding.
velvet belt that would be.
No, it's fun. It is funny though, because we were talking about this with somebody, and one of them follows me, and I follow her. She married a basketball player. Is it Meg?
Yeah,
Meg
so
Laska, I think is her.
Meg Scala.
Meg Scala,
which is Rachel's
Meg
sister.
Listen, I love Alaska shows right now. Okay, maybe that's the problem. Deadliest Catch, but yeah. Anyway, and it is funny because you're right. I don't know. I think we followed each other for a long time, but I had no idea she was one of these 4, like the Kardashian sisters of Utah, right?
Right.
And
so not all of our covers are. I mean, we have done Steve Young, we have done Donny Osmond twice, Matt Holland, whatever. There've been some bigger names, but sometimes it's that niche-y name, that we have done. And sometimes like the high school story, that's going to be our cover this time. And it has been occasionally through the past 20 years. And so those aren't names that anyone's going to know, but the idea of the schools and graduation is hopefully
But see,
intriguing.
I like that because it is fun to, if I see a cover like that and there's, you said that you love creating headlines, right? Mm-hmm. There's something that kind of catches because your magazine is such a, like, you just want to open it. It's a pretty magazine, right?
Thanks.
But like, I know a lot about Tony Finau. Mm-hmm. I love Tony Finau. Don't get me wrong. But if I see something that kind of catches my attention that I don't know about, I think I'm more prone to open it and read about it.
Yeah.
Because I want to learn something new. And I think that that's probably hard to do nowadays because we all know so much about what's going on. And so
that has been interesting. And Tony Finau's on our current cover. Right. He was a great interview, and his wife too. It's just, I'm really impressed. I love it when I interview someone that I already am impressed with, and then when I'm done, I'm
that's
like,
cool.
They don't disappoint you.
Wow, there's more to that person.
Right.
That's really cool. That's really, really fun. But going off what you're saying, interviewing people has become different than it used to be because I go in there knowing what they ate for breakfast sometimes, And so then I have to strike this balance of if I ask them, hey, what are your Thanksgiving plans or how'd your summer go? Then they might think, do you not follow me? Like I've already, I have been expressing my answers for months.
Well, it was in the gram.
Excuse me.
And so I strike this balance of like being researched, knowing what they are about and what they say and all that, but needing some fresh content. Do you?
Yeah, I don't prepare.
You can be
He
surprised
has a
over and
whole
over
list.
again.
Well, that's why we're a good pair, because he is more prepared, and then I just kind of bounce off of it. But you're right. Like sometimes you want to be creative. Like I want to naturally learn something about somebody, but of course I never really thought of the whole like offended thing, right? Of course, if somebody acted offended, I wouldn't like them anyway. So who cares? But yeah, I mean it's a delicate balance. But I think you two, having a journalism background, are always going to be able to get, I would imagine, stuff out of people that other people just don't think of, because it's your job, like it's your craft.
What's been your hardest interview? Like who is the person who was like the hardest like to get information out of?
Who's the biggest jerk you've ever talked? I'm just kidding.
Well, we've just been waiting for
Who's
this
never
opportunity.
coming back?
I've thought like all along, if we ever do a last issue,
Oh my gosh, it'd be so great.
here's what we really think, and
like
here's
a-
the people who never
Like
paid.
the ultimate roast. You should do like a roast issue every.
Oh, people would love it.
It would be amazing.
Some people would love it.
I'm in.
Yeah. The first, I've done Donny Osmond on the cover twice. There's only been, I think, 3 people on the cover twice. He's one. Matt Holland we did twice, and we've done Gary Herbert twice. And the first time I interviewed Donny, and I was young too, so it was within our first year, I felt like because famous people kind of have their, this is what I share, these are my things I
Well, it's
talk
rehearsed,
about. It is a
right?
little bit rehearsed.
Let's call it what it is. They
It
get
is.
asked the question so often, it just is like you can ask a question. It's as natural as what their name is.
Yep.
The stories they tell and how they tell it. I mean, we've experienced that with a couple guests. Like you'll ask them questions and you can tell that they've answered it a time or two.
I can't wait for our last episode.
I can't wait for it either. I want to hear.
Oh.
And what are you going to say when we leave the studio today?
Bennett's had the worst BO of any guest.
Hey,
Wow.
that's funny. So I hadn't yet learned how to get past that.
Yeah.
And so I didn't feel great about that interview with Donny the first time. I interviewed him again the second time, and it was awesome. He was in a more peaceful place, and I was in a better place too, I think, and had learned how to really get people to open up. And a lot of it is, all of it is just listening. And then I have a couple go-to questions. I'll say, tell me a little bit more about that. Or can you give me an example of that? And then, because I want them to tell me stories. So if they just talk about and entrepreneurs are the same way, because everyone will say, I've got a great team and I, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that's not, everyone says that. Like, I need more. I need a story.
Right.
I need a time you were bawling in the
You need
closet.
the nitty gritty of that.
Yeah. Nitty gritty.
I like that.
There should be a podcast called that. And so it's getting to that
She just
story.
offended me. That means that she hasn't heard of us. It's messed up.
Everybody's heard of you guys. Are you kidding? So it's just getting to that story. So it's just me waiting and asking questions. And a lot of times my cover interviews, they're 2 hours plus. And then I usually do a photo on a second day. And that ends up being another interview, because everyone is in a different mood in different days and different times of day and things. And so sometimes on another day, I'll have read through my notes. I come back with a few different questions and they tell me more. And another key to get really
Probably
good
feels
stuff.
more natural too that second day, because you're just there to get the photos,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
That's
Well,
smart.
and
Everyone's
also,
guards down a little
Yep.
bit.
I've gotten a lot of great stuff also at the end of the interview when they're walking me out of their house or their business and I'm not typing anymore and we're just talking. Sometimes they say the most beautiful things, the most funny things, really specific things, or a story about something hanging on their wall. You guys have interesting space here, So once people start telling you stories and they're not guarded on every word, you get really good stuff.
Didn't you have some kind of Kaylani Sataki moment where you got locked out?
Well, so Kaylani, when we did that, I was one of his first interviews, I think, which was fun because he and his wife both, I thought, over time, you're going to become more guarded. And that's a sad reality you're going to have, you will reach.
Sure.
But I was in there before they got to that point. And I think they're still super open. They're still really real and everything like that. But I was just, they were new to the fame that this role was going to have for them.
It's the other press, right? Like I talked to Taysom like 2 weeks ago, and it was the same. He told me about what happened at the Super Bowl, and they really chopped up his words. And I think that's why I can't get him on the podcast, because they really met. Like
He hasn't agreed to a cover story with me either. Let's
yeah.
tag team this. Yeah, he's a good guy. yeah, so it's been just a process of getting people to open up and get them to trust me. And then people often, really all the time now that I interview, they've read our magazine and they're familiar that this isn't going to make you look bad.
Right.
I'm going to make you look good. It's going to be honest, but it's going to be your best side. This is not investigative, interrogative. This is celebratory and reflective. So it's been fun.
Who was your most, was there a time when you got started that was, how do you ask it? Almost like you were really nervous because this was a big name and you were like, oh my gosh, this is kind of a big deal.
So Larry King was the first one that I felt like that. And I've, a few other times too, but that one I just remember, and this was early on, and I was like, he interviews people for a living.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And I thought I would probably ask a question he thought was dumb, or maybe I would interrupt him, or I just didn't want to do anything wrong. And I wanted to be impressive if I could to him. And so as part of my research before the interview, I was watching his show daily and just anything I could so that we could make good small talk and he'd know I'm really familiar with your legacy and everything. So he had Hillary Clinton on his show a day or two before our interview. And I noticed during our interview, he treated me the same way. He had as much interest in me and humor and kindness and not looking at the clock that he did with her. I was really impressed with that. And I didn't feel like he was analyzing me at all. I think he, in fact, was probably kinder to me than normal, maybe just because he knows how hard it is,
Been there before, right?
He's been there before. So you're listening to people's answers, but you're also in the other part of your brain thinking about what direction you want to go next.
Right.
But you don't, some of the worst interviewers that I've seen, and some of them are on national TV, they ask a question and then they don't react. They just go to the second question on the list. And it's very just choppy. A conversation is how you want to do it, because if you don't listen to their first answer, you might, when I do listen to their answer, my second question always changes because it's like a tweak of the first answer. And so you just becomes
and it
fluid.
should, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that, that's when there's an agenda. And I don't think people like that. They want to just hear a natural conversation.
I used to go into interviews with all my questions listed out. And a lot of our newer employees do that as well. And there's nothing really wrong with that because that is preparation. Right. But you don't want to be married to that. Now when I go in, like when I interviewed Tony Finau, I had 5 questions I wanted to be sure that I asked throughout the time. But basically I wanted to have a conversation with him and take what he said and grow with that and really focus on what he seemed to care about.
So when
during
you
our
interview
conversation.
someone, you need 2 hours for the first day and the photo shoot. How, does that turn into typically a 2 or 3 page spread? How much actual content do you get from those hours of conversation?
Right. So at that point, if I really do get that much time, which I didn't with Tony, I have way more than I'm going to be able to include. Most of my cover stories, they go about 8 pages, but there's some ads in there.
Yeah.
So it's usually about 6 pages of content. And then we'll have a cover photo and a TOC photo, some extra things for online. So 2,500 words maybe. And some different sidebars and things that pull out highlights. People like multiple entry points into an article. So if it's something long like that, I don't want it to be this gray thing that flows to, I want multiple entry points. So if they turn the page, there's something else that might pull them in.
You need bullet points and different topics and subjects.
Right.
And
yeah. His favorite places to eat, whatever. So that's always fun. And as a magazine writer, you're not just thinking words, you're thinking visual. So sometimes during the conversation, I'm like, a day in the life of you would be interesting. I'm going to do that as a pullout, or, your list of your favorite song lyrics and where they came from or whatever. It just depends on who the person is. But I'm always thinking of how can we get people to dive into a long story. Our attention spans are so short. We're scrolling like this. So I've got to catch people quickly. So every magazine, we try and have a good read. But then a lot of our sections over time have become a lot shorter and choppier. If you look at our first few years...
Chunky. That's what we call them.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Chunky style. We have our different vernacular we use at work. But we used to have a lot of longer reads, like really in-depth journalism. And now, not so much. We have a lot of stories like our Fab 40 or 44, where it's a blurb,
right.
on somebody. But So I try and give a meal, right? So there's an entree that's really meaty, maybe our cover story, and then we have a little dessert here and a little appetizer here throughout the magazine so that people can work their way through it. And then now everything's online as well, so which has a different vibe and format.
I think one thing that has been kind of intimidating for me as far as who we've interviewed are people who were childhood role models. So
That makes total sense.
someone like, I remember I was at Dale Murphy's house, and this is someone who I grew up watching on WTBS, and that's some of the only baseball you could see when you had just a few channels. And my parents bought me his book, Murph, and then I'm all of a sudden there in his house, and I'm listening to him talk about, the birds outside and his, yard work, and where his kids slid a baseball bat down the stairs that punched a hole kind of in the sheetrock. And I'm like, oh, that's a wooden bat. Is that an old Atlanta Braves bat? Or Devin Durant was the same way. I remember watching him score 30 whatever points every game for BYU when I was about 8 years old. And so then all of a sudden he's in our office and he's walking around, and that weirds me out a lot more than if we had TJ Haas or somebody, because I think I'm just a hardened adult now. But those childhood stars are still just, whoa, you're a real person.
Right. Well, everything's so big when it's like, that was Wayne Gretzky for me, right? Like I still I've got a poster of him in my office. Like that doesn't really go away. But it also kind of reminds you that we do need to be a little bit more like that still. And just, if you love something, you just love it. And when you're a kid, it just, it's cements in there. It's concrete. And if I bumped into him in real life, I would lose my mind. I just, I've been around some pretty big people, with my job, and I feel like I know how to act. But if it was him, like you said, to your point, like a childhood hero, I think I would be the kid again. I would just kind of freak out and be super creepy.
Well, I hope you get to meet him.
400-pound, 40-year-old guy was like breathing heavy next to me, and it was really weird.
Well, I hope you get to meet him, and I hope there's video rolled of the moment, But the thing is, even all those people that we're intimidated by perhaps at first, everybody is just human.
Totally right.
And like you, Dale, talking about, the grass and the hole in his wall, and Bronco talking about how he likes to mow his lawn more than anything else. Everybody is really, really human. And so that's really awesome too. I got to interview Stephen Covey a few years before he passed away. We did a cover story on him. He told me no for a long time. But then I didn't realize how strategic I was being, but I did a cover story on his wife when the Covey Center was opened in Provo, and that's her baby. And he really loved the article on her. And he wanted to buy several hundred copies to give to grandkids and their missionaries and a bunch of people. So Matt and I made that delivery ourselves to the Covey's house.
Right.
They were not sending some UPS man over here. Here's your magazine, Stephen Covey. And then I asked him again, if I could feature him, because he was so happy with the magazine. And he did agree to it. I waited a year or so that it wasn't two Coveys all, same year. But I loved meeting him, and he's a brilliant man that people still quote. There's a lot of vernacular from him, win-win, sharpen the saw, that we don't even attribute to him anymore almost because it's so common. And it was very much kind of overwhelming, but then he's carrying my bag to my car afterwards, and he's telling me stories about whatever it is, his painting in his front room. And I remember I got in the car after interviewing him, and it was the song, I hope you had the time of your life. And I was like, I did. And I cranked that song. I had the time of my life. Meeting my, one of my heroes. And those have been exciting days and really instructive. And I've tried to share some of the things I've learned. Of course, in the magazine, I try and share the good things, but also with our business and with our kids. Like, here are what the great people are doing. And here's what they're talking about. In fact, I did a TED Talk. It was actually one of the scariest things I ever did. But my TED Talk topic was what happy people talk about. And I talked about, after having had, just, I don't know how millions of hours of conversation, here's what people talk about. They don't talk about their problems and how people have done them wrong. They talk about what they're excited about. They talk about what they've learned, not what went wrong, but what they learned, And that's totally what I've found, and tried to share that.
Such a small thing you just said, but it's not what went wrong. It's what you learned, and people's perspective and how they approach things that totally defines what they end up doing with stuff.
For sure.
Who is on your like hit? Like who is your like ultimate like number one?
Okay, so I'll tell it. He knows what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Because this person has told me no for 20 years.
Let's get him.
Robert Redford.
Oh,
And I've tried every angle, and I think I have all the right people trying to help me, but he just hasn't wanted to do that.
why do you think they won't do it? Just they're too private, or at the
I think
stage?
he,
or-
at times in the past 20 years, has been kind of mad at Utah County for different reasons. Also, he doesn't need to be famous. A lot of people, I get hit up to be on the cover by a lot of people who need or want the publicity because it
Yeah.
will help them.
for sure.
He doesn't need this. In fact, he doesn't even want people to know where he lives.
I remember one time we were talking with someone who was close to him, and they said he just said no to CNN and ABC, and what makes you think he's all of a sudden going to jump you in the priority list?
In fact, that's so I've seen him twice at Sundance, and I've approached him both times, which he doesn't love. Okay. Yeah,
Especially when you call him Bob.
I've tried to be respectful, but it just has not worked yet. Hasn't aligned. But in fact, he's been on Salt Lake Magazine a couple times, and we're not like competitive necessarily with Salt Lake Magazine, but one came out a couple years ago, and it was on my desk, like just come from the mail, and I was holding it, and the general manager at Sundance calls my cell phone right then. He says, "Jeanette, you've probably seen Salt Lake Magazine. I just want you to know they didn't even ask us. Like, we didn't know that was happening. They didn't interview him. They bought that photo. If he does anything, it'll be with you." I was like, "Oh, Chad, you're awesome. And thank you, because I was going to call you." Like, what the heck? Anyway, at this point, it's more of just like something that it's like a conquest, you know?
I am so sorry.
That was good.
It's my
Should we answer the
daughter.
phone? Let's see what she needs.
She's 12 years old. She's using FaceTime.
Hey Tay.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Everything's silent.
Maybe she can't get the remote to work or something.
Another thing that's super gratifying, going back to your story about the Coveys, is the photo that we took of Sandra Covey is what they use right on the entrance to the Covey Center when they say it's named after her and this is her legacy. And that's really fun to see that they're they
proud
like
of
the
the
work.
Yeah.
Or sometimes we do this, high schoolers who will change the world. And one of the students who got picked was someone who had just had this ongoing battle with cancer. And he ended up losing that battle. And someone was telling us when they were at his funeral that they had the magazine cover there and opened up to his article and his favorite quotes. And that just feels like why I went into journalism in the first place. We're helping write the history. And when we write about somebody or take their picture, that just kind of cements their place. Or maybe this is someone that they haven't heard about, but we're like, you should hear about this. And if you haven't,
To be able to look back on it too, right? Like if one of these high schoolers really does something special, to be able to, pull that article
that's
out.
been
Oh, cool.
interesting when we go back and talk to the high schoolers. Some of them are like, "Oh man, I got a degree in early childhood education, and I have 4 kids, and I live in Eagle Mountain now. And so, sorry, I didn't do this or that." But others of them have gone on to be Broadway stars and NBA basketball players and influencers. And so
And
it's
speaking to your first one, when they say that, like, "Oh, I haven't really done much." No, you've lived life, you
For
know?
sure.
And everybody's story is fascinating. And we check in with them at 10 years. Well, you haven't lived a full life at 10 years. We'll check in with you later,
Yeah.
It's all good. I don't want anyone to feel pressure that we only value one type of success. And in fact, that high school story reminds me of that every year because the schools help us pick them. And then we try and get a good balance of boys and girls, so there's some finagling on our part as well. But the schools help us. There's a variety that come in. Some are super confident. I mean, we had Tyler Haas. He was a high school student who changed the world. We had Jackson Emery. And they're coming in confident in their jerseys and they got the ball. They're all
Right.
good, But then other kids come in, they bring their mom, they've got their tuba, they've never done anything like this before. And so it's a range of ways to be awesome.
Right.
But then it's cool because they all act the same way when we ask them, "What do you love about your school?" They all like light up and say, basically, "I go to the best school in the county." There's no cliques. They all say that we have the best students, best school spirit, best this and that and the other. And not every school is the best, but the fact that that's how they see their school,
Right.
no matter who these kids are, you're a band kid, you're an athlete, you're 36 ACT, they think their school is they're so happy they're at their school.
Right.
And to me, that's like, okay, that's why you're going to be successful. Is because you feel like your life, you're happy about your life. You're going to create more happiness along the way when you enjoy what's been given to you and what you've created. And you see the good, you'll create more good. So I like seeing those consistencies in those youth when they come in.
I think you need to do the opposite now. Find the kids that are like barely
Headed to jail, future inmates.
Like the kids that teachers are like, this kid will go nowhere.
And they'll probably be the most successful.
Well, and that's
ones.
the thing. There's some really funny, like
Yeah,
I would
they'll
That's
go on to
actually
be a rock and roll
hilarious.
star or something.
yeah,
Well,
or
a lot
I
of times
mean,
that motivates someone. Both Todd Peterson and Josh James I've heard him tell stories. Those are CEOs in town of some tech companies. Yeah.
We know them.
Yeah, I'm just thinking for the listeners.
Right.
Okay, I mean obviously
Right.
you guys know them, but for just they've told stories of someone said this to me and it that I couldn't do it, that I wouldn't amount to something, and that's so motivating, and it's now on my T-shirt. And so sometimes that can be. The
I
case.
have a couple people that have said stuff, and it's like, oh,
Right.
Just watch.
I
You checked out my podcast.
I remember you.
Yeah, totally.
I remember you.
I just listened to Michelle Obama's book Becoming, and she had she wanted to go to Princeton because her older brother was already a basketball star there, and she thought, oh, I can see him while I'm there. And there was a admissions person that she talked to, and they said, I'm not sure you could really get in, or I don't know if you're Princeton material. And to this day, Michelle Obama's like, I am going to go to Princeton. And she hasn't singled out who that person is, but it definitely motivated her.
Wow. Interesting. I mean, it's true. I think there's a lot of people. I was watching that Last Dance, this Michael Jordan documentary. I mean, what's that? Jerry Krause, is that his name?
Yeah.
I mean, he totally has like a chip on his shoulder. Like he basically wanted to be wealthy and powerful just to stick it to people. Mm-hmm. And there are which I think that's kind of scary sometimes.
And Michael Jordan getting caught. One thing he got cut as a 10th grader, and they were talking to the coach who cut him, and he said, yeah, here's the thing. He improved a lot from 10th grade to 11th grade.
Yeah.
And he also grew from 5'10" to 6'3". So.
And that's and sometimes that rejection is what the chip on. I mean, I know a couple athletes that they'll come in here and they'll just complain about whatever. I'm like, well, look how you're succeeding. Like that chip on your shoulder is motivating you to get
absolutely
better.
Absolutely.
And so in a sense, like you can't look at like your story with Jordan. You can't really look at that coach and go, what an idiot.
Yeah.
Maybe
awesome
Jordan never becomes Jordan without that coach rejecting him, right? And so
and how awesome was
too.
his mom that she was like,
Yeah.
get better. Like you want
that doesn't exist anymore, right?
Get better.
Like
we're
work
not
harder.
We're
get
not
better.
going to transfer schools. We're not going to badmouth the coach. No, you're just going to work harder.
Control what you can control.
Yeah, you're going to work harder.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And that is going out the window.
It's gone.
My
It's gone.
goodness.
Do you feel, I guess going back to the magazine business question is, obviously it's evolved, but with the internet, I mean, do you feel like magazines will always have a place, like the actual print, or do you feel like there will be a time in the future where it is all online?
Yeah, that's the question. When we go to any journalism conference or anything, this is the question, right? And it's something we get asked about a lot, and it's something we think about a lot too. Here's kind of the thing. I do think magazines have a place and will stay in their form. Newspapers are different. Magazines aren't all about timeliness. It's also the experience of the magazine and of turning the pages and filling that paper. With the newspaper, which is content, we prefer to digest that content quickly. Like that's really important, even overnight. So when I worked at the Deseret News, we put out a paper. Well, it takes even though it's as quick as possible, it takes 12 hours before it hits someone's porch. Well, if it's the NBA Finals or
Could
something,
be old news.
That is old news. So we've seen kind of some evolution. So over the past 10 years or so, about 10 years ago, 12 or 13 now, we started doing a lot of publishing for network marketing companies and home builders associations like the Parade of Homes magazine. Anyway, we started doing a lot of that then. And then there was kind of a swing when people were like, especially network marketing companies, we can save so much money if we go digital with this. And we just send this out, e-newsletter style and all that. And then, so we lost some projects through that period of time. And then several clients came back after a few years and were like, nobody was reading that. And when I hit Triple Diamond Million Plus Yacht Club, like you want it in print so you can say, Grandma, check it out. Or so you can take it to a prospective downline person. There's a legitimacy that comes in a printed product.
I completely agree.
That is not the same as digital. So both matter, both are important, but we did regain a lot of clients. Even BYU Idaho had a magazine at one point, went all digital, donations to the campus went down, to the school went down, connection to the alumni went down. So one of the things that they wanted to do was bring back the magazine. So that's one of our projects we do every year is the BYU Idaho Alumni Magazine. It's super fun. It keeps us connected to our home state, proud Idahoans who don't want to live there anymore, but we still love it. Still love it. And
just a little too windy.
Yeah.
At a distance.
Windy. Yeah. And so the printed product has that really, there's a long shelf life to it. There's a beauty to it. And magazines are very visual. So you don't get the same experience on your phone looking at a display about a beautiful home or things like that. So when we're creating content, some content is perfect for online. And some content is perfect for a magazine. And so everything that we do pretty much gets put in both. But we try and repurpose it in the right way for the right format. But it's interesting because our workload, I would say, has increased when revenue has not, just because now you can't just put out a magazine. You got to also have a strategy for having it on all these platforms, even though they're not monetizing like they could or should, but they've got to be there, So we've had some successes. We've had, some harder lessons. Our Bride magazine, for example, on Instagram, Utah Valley Bride is a really strong Instagram account. Like we are the market leader, thought leader on weddings in the whole state with Instagram, and we are able to monetize that. But a lot of our other content is not monetized in the same way, but it has to be out there on all those different platforms. So it's been a juggle to figure that out. I think one of the reasons we've been able to succeed for 20 years is that we're efficient. And we came into it with no investors, have still never had any investors, and a project has to make sense. So if it doesn't make sense, then we do fewer pages, we mail out fewer, we figure it out so that we're not losing money. There's a profit margin in everything we print, and we're nimble and small enough that we're able to do that and figure that out.
I'd never thought about like a magazine being an experience before, but hearing you talk about it, it totally is. And your magazines do a fantastic job of it, because as I do think about it, maybe the average person, maybe it's just me, but you do kind of lump magazine with newspaper. It's like, but they are very different. Mm-hmm. And like when you do see the magazine, it's like, I'm going to pick that up. I want to flip through it.
Right. I've got the Tiger Woods Sports Illustrated, right? I ordered a couple of them
and you're right.
I'm going to keep that, right?
The weight of the page and the feel, and like the colors. Like
I miss magazine sections.
There's a lot that goes into
going to the grocery store and I still will look anytime I see a magazine wall, like at the airport. I love the airport, right? Because that's a place where you can still get all those magazines. But yeah, there's just something about a magazine.
There's a prestige factor that weighs heavily into what we do. And if you're a local dentist and you're in our magazine or being featured, they're like, oh, okay, here's a kid he went to, this local high school and he played football, and now I want everyone to kind of know where I am now.
Yeah.
Or like these magazines that we do for the direct sales industry. If you said, hey, I was the top person, and they let everybody know by sending out a mass email that you clicked on a PDF, and that's not the same. I think about Mike Wazowski from Monsters Inc. when he says, I'm on the cover of a magazine. It's this very
the barcode.
Yeah, very, very prestigious thing. That I don't feel like that's going away anytime soon.
And we love helping people with that. So the 40 Under 40, which you were in, alum right here.
Thank you.
Sometimes I've met people.
I still have a couple of years to make.
You got time. We're actually working on our list right now.
That's weird.
This year. Wow, interesting. I'm kind of feeling a bribe coming on. Anyway, I've met people sometimes that are in their early 40s, and they'll say, like, my big regret is I never made it in that story. And I'm sad that we somehow overlooked them or something, but it makes me feel good that like it mattered to them,
So how, like the 40 for 40, how many nominations do you get for something like that? Like, how many people are you combing through? And do you only comb through people who are nominated, or are you actively like looking for people?
It's a mix. It's a mix. So there's usually probably 100 people on our list of people we're considering.
That you guys make, or that they
and
submitted?
It's a combination of things submitted or ones we've kind of kept our eye on.
Or we have a corporate board that you meet with quarterly, and they all bring their suggestions.
They bring some ideas. And sometimes we're like, we haven't done someone from Adobe for a few years. Let's find someone at Adobe who would be good. So sometimes there's categories we're looking for.
Yeah, a musician or someone, a healthcare person.
Right. Yeah. And so then we look at the 100 and we try and have a variety of industries. We don't want it to be all tech, and we don't want to be heavy one gender or the other. We want a really good balance. And so those things go into consideration. We only feature people once. So sometimes people apply again next year or something. But for that particular thing, it's not like 10 years running. We want to just introduce
for the 10th year in a row.
Yeah, for that one, we want to just spread the love, right? Yeah. So we're looking for as many people, new people as possible to introduce people to. Super fun to be able to celebrate that. And we have an event. We're not going to have one this year, because it was going to be at Sundance, next month. But and it's fun, and at times people have been teary and grateful just that they got to meet everybody in the room that was in the article or whatever. And that's a huge payday for me. To feel like it mattered to somebody and it helped them, and then it helped them succeed or be a better person. And then I think that blesses our whole community. And so I'm big into the karma or whatever you want to call it. And hopefully we're spreading a lot of that. And I think it's just been fun to be part of this community. We have an amazing community. I wouldn't trade this for any place. I wouldn't trade it for Salt Lake. I wouldn't trade it for New York, because I like the size of this community. And Salt Lake is part of our community as well, of course. And the point of the mountain has become more gray since we started, so
we need to build a dam.
A moat. We got
a big moat. We got to ride in the new silicone slope. So like where the prison is, we got to keep that on our side. But
I like it. Yeah. So we've done more in South Salt Lake than we did in the beginning, because more's happening there. But anyway, it's just fun to be part of the good news. It is so cool.
I mean, and to your point, the community is unique. Like everyone... Like the more successful people become typically here, like the more giving and willing they are as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what we found. I mean, with guests that are coming on, we got started, we had some awesome people come on, and it was like, hold on, what are you guys doing? And they would show up and they're like, hold on, what am I here for? It's like, oh, we're going to do a podcast. They're like, oh, okay. But they're just showing up because they're friends with you or, whatever it is. So what would you guys say right now is kind of getting you excited? Is there a project you're working on, or an idea, or a magazine concept or cover that you're really excited about?
Our 20th anniversary has been big in my mind. I've been catching up with several of the former cover stories, and so that's been a big thing for me. And then working towards this event, hopefully to gather as many of those as we can. That's something I'm really excited about right now. And then always just whatever issue we're working on, the 40 Under 40 for Business Q is going to be fun. And as soon as we come out with something like our Bride magazine this year, I'm super proud of it. We have an awesome team, and they really knocked it out of the park on that. But then immediately when people get a magazine, they start giving us ideas, and so that's fun. So we always have a running list of ideas or things we want to explore.
Is that really fun though? When everybody wants to tell, like, you should change your
for the Bride magazine, it's more fun for some people than all of us.
But that is true. So we learned our lesson. We stopped asking the guys in the office to help us pick the Bride cover, because that always turned into a huge fight. Seriously, you don't like blonde? What? You don't like her eyebrows? Are you kidding? Do you not know what the trend is?
Heidi Klum has been to Utah County.
Exactly.
Chrissy Teigen was born somewhere.
And that, you just proved my point there, right? So
we're a bunch of children.
So the women in the office do the Bride magazine quietly over in the corner and surprise them.
But then they say they're doing it quietly, but then when they're picking the covers, they're like, hey, this needs to be Instagrammed. Can you guys line up over here and
take a picture of us looking at the covers as we... That is true. I have turned Matt into an Instagram husband at times. I had to teach him, don't take just one photo. Like, I need options.
That's right. Duh, Matt.
But that's one fun thing about what we do. We do the Pride of Homes magazine, so we can be focused on that. And then we do a Bride magazine, but then we also do the BYU football section. And we do, we have a business magazine. And then we're also over here writing about anti-aging pill or candles or something. It's
Crazy.
always something new to dive into.
Do you guys have a favorite? I mean, is there a baby? I mean, taking the money out of it and all of that stuff, like, is there still something that either one of you really looks forward, whether it be a section or one of the magazines, to doing still?
So our business magazine, Business Q, is my favorite to work on. I think it's because I learn so much. It's like I get an MBA every issue practically, because I'm sitting down with someone who has done amazing things,
Right.
has learned things I haven't learned yet, figured out whatever, inventions, patents, and I learned so much. So that one's super fun for me. It's really fulfilling and inspiring. And then to get to celebrate that, one of the things that we started in 2008, I had this vision to do. I love the Inc. 500 issue. It's like it's Christmas to me. It's the Sears catalog of our childhood. Which, if you're younger than me, you don't know what that is. But anyway,
They might not.
Sears catalog.
Young people might not even
Circle-
know what Sears is.
True.
Grandma, grandpa would give and say, "What do you want for Christmas?"
That's
And
right.
Just
exactly.
start.
Okay,
Those were
you guys
awesome.
are old enough to know. Yeah, and so to me, that the Inc. 500 magazine is that, and I. For years, like, what are the Utah companies and what are the industries? It's so fascinating. So I wanted to do that just for our community. And so I was going to do the UV 100. Before we even went to print, it became UV 50 and has stuck since 2008. But we named the top 50 businesses. That's just a thrill for me. I think our own company isn't going to make the list. We're not doubling every year or anything close to that. But just to see who is growing and
It's so
learn from
fun to
them.
look through that list. It really is.
Well, and now I think
glad to
it's
hear
even
that.
cooler hearing why you do it. You know what I mean? Like to hear that you love the Inc. 500, like that's really cool. I mean, that's taking something that you loved and turning it into something that, I mean, just hearing Andrew, like, I love reading that list. Like, how
That's
cool
cool.
is that story?
Well, thanks.
You know what I mean?
And we do a gala associated with that. And usually I say some version at the end, like basically that I believe that behavior that gets recognized gets repeated. And so,
Whatever's rewarded's repeated.
yeah, so go out and repeat what we've celebrated tonight. We've recognized your greatness and your growth. Now let's go do it again this year and grow our community.
I think that you should sing that song that you serenaded Blake Roney to last year.
So I'm not a singer, okay? I do play the organ with the feet. Just a little side note.
With the feet. Humble brag.
I've got my own organ
humble
shoes, ladies and gentlemen. I legit play the organ. But anyway, I'm not a singer, but last year I ended up singing twice in like the same month of things. And one of them was we were recognizing Blake Roney, founder of New Skin, at the UV 50 for Lifetime Achievement. And
If you don't sing at the end of this, I'm going to be so disappointed.
oh man. So the morning of the gala, like I'm excited, but I'm nervous and I can't sleep. And I'm like, I feel like our presentation for him is a little dull. It's a video and it's this and that, but like he's a super entertaining. He has a great sense of humor. I got to do something. I got to punch it up. So then I'm like, maybe I could write a song or a parody. So New Skin started in 84. What was the top song in 84? What was Phil Collins' Against All Odds? So I'm like, I got to rewrite this for Blake. And so, see, here's the problem is I don't remember all the words. But it's 5 a.m. that morning. I am rewriting this song for Blake, you know? And then I sang it. And he came up after to accept the award, and he started it, but he gave me a hug, and he's like, "You are so weird." He's like, "I like weird." You know, it was this moment we had. But it was just kind of a moment of bravery, me trying to pump it up. The year before, we had honored Josh James and Andrew Smith. For Foods Group, Andrew Smith, Josh James of Domo. And I know you guys know, but just for anyone who might be listening. And I wanted it to be kind of reflective of them. So right before that, Cosmo's head had I was going to say blown off. That's not the right word. Like the mascot head had
Right.
fallen off. So I wanted to do a play on that. So I convinced, persuaded the Cosmo team
Use
to
whatever word
come
you want to use.
and let Josh James get in the Cosmo suit and have the real Cosmo do like a lot of stunts and then do a switcheroo and Josh comes out. He's in the Cosmo thing. So you think it's the same guy and then his head falls off and it's Josh. And that's how we introduced him. Anyway, and then we had Andrew driving around in a tiny kid race car on the thing. So I just want to make it fun for people and memorable.
Right.
You know, I don't want to do the same thing every time. So I'm always trying to think what would be just like slightly weird, maybe to use Blake's word, but memorable, creative, fun.
Well, I mean, you're showing a human side to him too, which I think is kind of cool. Like
That's
People
what
want to
everyone
see
wants
that they're
to
not
see.
so scripted, right? They don't mind going out and throwing a sweaty Cosmo suit on, right? And
Yeah.
just going
I
out
think
there and
that's why
having
the
fun.
podcast has been so fun is we do a good job. If nothing else, we just talk long enough that they have to start letting their guard down. But it's been a lot of fun to get people, and a common comment is, I haven't told this story in a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, because it's just like you spend enough time, you get comfortable, and people. That's why people tune in, that they want to hear the other side of who it is. Because you can go online and read about people, and social media, you can see a lot about them, but the goal is to expose or show a different side of everyone. And I think you guys do a really good job of that.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, and learning those connections. Like, again, the Inc. 500 thing. Like something that's special to you that you get to, it's cool that you get to kind
Adds
of
a
let that
different meaning to
creativity
it.
out and put it in, in your magazine, and it's turned into something that other people like too. And
Is
those are the
fun.
stories people want to hear.
Those are highlights for me. Like when going back to the Blake thing just for a second, Blake Roney. So one of the lines, I wish I could remember all the lines because it was so clever, guys. But anyway,
Can I just walk away from you?
it was turned like to his life. But one of the lines was, I had talked about New Skin and Center Street and all this, and then I said something like, "Turn around and see us cheer," and the whole audience started cheering. For
Oh,
him.
no way.
And because it was leading, to him, and I felt so excited that people were as happy about Blake as I was, and we were all celebrating him, and it was a fun moment to
Very
see,
cool.
to
Well,
create people's happy moments.
And so many people, being Blake Roney, a lot of these athletes is the same thing. Like, I'm sure everything just kind of runs together, and that's the type of thing that they're going to remember, right? They get a lot of people are kissing up to him all the time and do nice things for him all the time, but not like that, right? And so that's something that they'll kind of cherish and remember, and it's really cool. So
Yeah, thanks.
So
Yeah.
what would be like a parting word of advice for someone, whether they are an aspiring journalist, entrepreneur, stay-at-home parent? Is there something that is a principle that either has guided you guys or like a piece of advice that's been really good?
I would say
Go ahead.
a piece of advice from the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad that has stuck with me is the big hat, no cattle syndrome.
a lot of that now, isn't there?
Yeah, I think that there are so many people who want to appear as if they're an overnight success, and they want to drive just to the right car and wear just the right clothes. And those are many times the people who don't make it. And the people who make it are the ones who they'll put their money into, if they wanted to start a landscaping company, they put their money back into equipment or into buying land for a nursery, all these things that you're really not going to see when you run into them at a, class reunion or something. Right. And so we've always tried to just get by with as little as possible.
No hat, a few cattle.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't get an office.
We started off with no hat and one cow that wandered away. And over the first year or two of our business, we slowly gathered a couple of little unhealthy looking
Little sickly
cows.
cows. Yeah, we did it out of our house for 2 years and didn't get an employee. We got our office and our first employee 2 years in. So that's definitely been one. The one that I thought of, and it's a phrase I actually think of at least once a day. And it's when I was in college, I heard a speaker say it, and I wrote it in my Franklin planner. And it was,
We're hitting all the old.
We are.
I had a Palm Pilot after that, just so you
I
know.
love it.
Your actions are evidence of what you want. And I heard it and I wrote it down so I could think about it, and I still think about it all the time. So this morning I thought about, I was going to run some half marathons, which we're going to rename. But I was going to do
so
some.
glad somebody finally agrees with me.
No,
on
I'm
that.
with you. I
love it.
I haven't thought of it before, but I'm on your side with this. So, and a lot of the races have been canceled. But this morning I thought, I'm kind of not wanting to get up and go for a little run. But then I think about that phrase, your actions are evidence of what you want. If I don't get up and run, that there's no evidence that I ever could run or would want to run a half marathon. If we want to turn a profit in our business or start a new title, there has to be some evidence that you can't just say it. Like, what does the evidence show?
Right.
If there's no evidence, if there's no action toward a goal, there's no evidence that's what you actually want. So I give myself a little pep talk with that phrase or a version of that phrase throughout the day.
That's really good.
You
I
get
like
out
that a
what you
lot.
put in type of thing.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and this whole pandemic thing, I mean, I think there's been a lot of good come out of it, at least from my perspective, like for my business. I mean, we've had to really adapt and you're right. Like it's things like that, I mean, you just have to be able to be agile. And if you want a good outcome, you got to work.
Right. Well, I like hearing you say that because a lot of restaurant owners couldn't say a lot of good things have come out of this. You know?
Yeah.
But the fact that you're saying that, you're looking for the good, and you've tweaked some things, you've pivoted,
for sure.
and some of those things will stay even in the new normal. Probably, some things you've learned.
No, absolutely. Like
Yeah.
it's really helped us. I mean, I've really learned a lot about where we maybe waste some money, and I've heard the term lean and mean a lot from people, and it's true. Like we're much leaner and meaner than we ever have been, and yeah, just you use this quote a lot, like act, react. Some people act, some people react.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But it's, when a problem, that's one area where I feel like I'm decent is when when I hit a wall, I can move. And that's kind of what we've had to do. And you're right. Like after all of this, there will be things that I won't change that we've learned during it. And so I think so many good things come from, I think we all learn the most when we have trials.
Right.
Right. So.
In fact, one of the quotes we put in one of our business magazines was this guy said, "Money makes you stupid." And he had taken on a lot of investment money.
Right.
And then they had the sweetest desks and they had the sweetest office, and they spent time spending money instead of earning it. And he wasn't lean. He wasn't figuring out the most productive way to do it. And I liked that.
It's a Warren Buffett quote that it's not until the tide goes out that you find out who's swimming naked.
Wow. I like that one a lot. It's very true. Well,
So what's happened is the tide's gone out and it's exposed a lot of things that it's sad, but it's exposed to a
It's
lot
sad.
of people that maybe you were running, not
Right.
the best way, and it's that you don't adapt. There's a lot of stuff about it.
Well, and it's true. I mean, look at your industry. How many magazines aren't around anymore? And it says a lot.
In fact, I've heard magazines and restaurants are the most filled businesses.
Totally. I don't, what is it, 80% failure in the first 5 years for a restaurant? I mean, starting a magazine right now, I can't even imagine. It'd be so hard. But there's still a place for all of it. It's just you have to work harder and give people what they want. And so...
And provide value.
Right.
I think if you focus on what can I provide of value, not just how can I make money,
Right.
then you're going to be
The
okay.
principle I talk about.
Yeah.
You guys read the book, The Go-Giver?
He loves the go-giver.
I just pitched you a softball right there.
It's very, very true. Well, we've learned a lot from you guys. This is really cool. And you guys really do a really cool service to our county and our state. And I think you guys it'll be fun to look back. You guys are chronicle.
We're not good with words.
Jeanette, would you teach me the word?
Chronicling, I think, is what you...
Chronicling? Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
I would say writing.
Yeah, well,
Documenting?
it's documenting, or a very cool time in Utah, and there's so much growth, and we're seeing so many. It's such an entrepreneurial state, and I mean, just look at what we've done for other places through the pandemic, even through some of our bigger companies, and so it'll be fun to look back, and I think a lot of people will refer to what you guys have put out to kind of read about this really cool time in Utah. So
yeah, I've been really proud of our state. And it's been fun to watch. I mean, the phrase Silicon Slopes didn't exist when we started our magazine.
Yeah.
Facebook didn't exist when we started the magazine.
Right.
It's been fun to watch things grow, and I'm just super proud of our community. I love being a cheerleader for it.
So last thing, where can they find you? Like people who are listening, like where do you want them to go to find you?
So UtahValley360.com is kind of our umbrella site. That from there you can find Utah Valley Magazine, Utah Valley Bride, Business Q, and other things. You can find us on all the social channels and on the newsstand.
I love it.
Yeah.
Everyone
my
go check
mailbox.
it out every month.
I love it when those come. I really do. I love magazines, and so I really appreciate that you guys do it.
I would say yours is the only one that I continue to get.
Yeah.
It's the only
Love
one.
it.
I've
Well, and I
canceled,
actually
canceled
read
all
it
my
when it
sports
comes.
ones because it's like I'm just gonna log on to ESPN. I don't care
It's true.
what's showing up with those ones.
It's very
It's so hard. It's hard because like Sports Illustrated, I feel like is one of the best written magazines. I've always loved it. I like sports not as much as I think the three of you probably do, but the writing in there has been amazing, But yeah, we're used to getting our content for free. So it's just been a weird time to be a content creator, but we've just tried to pivot and provide value like we were talking about.
Well, you guys are doing awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. This has been tons of fun. So
Very.
thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.